Thank you very much indeed, Father Sean, and much appreciated for your timekeeping. You're spot on. And we now have a little bit more time for questions, but maybe to begin with, I might ask a question, if you don't mind. This is a whole new topic. This is something that a lot of people are struggling to get their heads around, but we often almost think of things, and it's almost as if Google knows what we're thinking, that it seems to appear as an ad. But the Presentation Sisters and the Presentation family have a huge commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. And number 8 is about decent work and economic growth. And if you look at number 8 in the context of 17 goals, it's almost pivotal. However, while we might look for decent work, the whole notion of economic growth, we're wondering, should the two be separated rather than have decent work and economic growth in the one SDG, because constant economic growth would go against a lot of what you have mentioned with regards to sustainability and using of resources on a finite planet. But in this instance, I can hear you're talking about decent work is important when you mention universal basic income and the fact that in 2050, there'll be a lot of part-time jobs.
Well, I agree with you totally. For example, I write for the Messenger, the Jesuit magazine, and I wrote an article for next month on the circular economy. And what I get was, when I came home from the Philippines, I bought a good pair of boots, and I use them every day. And after about 5 or 6 years, I had a very good cobbler in Nina, and he actually put soles and heels on them, and I still have them to this day, almost 20 years later. But if I talk to him, the cobbler, he said, "Well, would any of your sons go into be cobbler?" "Oh no, they wouldn't. No, they're not interested." And I said, "Well, what about yourself?" "I'll be there maybe for the next 5 or 6 years, and then I retire. So Nina will have no cobbler." The reality is that's actually more what Nina needs than almost anything else. They need people who do these, and we need to start making things so we can fix them. Because as all of you know, if you have a problem with your fridges, you're inclined to throw them out rather than have people coming. We can't have long-term economic growth because it will destroy the planet. And we need to change the economy directly right now to a circular economy, and to know what that means. And it will affect every aspect of our lives. I mean, the worst one of all, as you know, from the economic growth is clothes. That people, the clothes we buy that come in from Indonesia and Bangladesh are so cheap that we only wear them once or twice and throw them out. Well, that is not sustainable in the future. And I would like to see a lot more focus on sustainability rather than economic growth. The economic growth, in my estimation, has done enormous damage and will continue to do enormous damage into the future.
Thanks, Father Sean. We have a question actually from John McGeady of the OLA Justice Officer, where he says, "Thanks, Father Sean." He said, "As new technology takes over from human production of goods and services, is there perhaps an opportunity to move away from the drudgery of the assembly line towards human work that is ultimately about human relationships, such as caring and cultural and artistic creativity? Could such work, all too often unpaid, be subsidized by the productivity gained by technology?"
And the answer is totally, absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, this technology will move us away from the awfulness of the factory floor. I give in the book, I give an example of this is the fourth industrial revolution. The first one was pretty awful. I mean, in the 1830s, people working in factories died at 36 or 37. You know, they weren't nice places. And even in the second revolution, after oil came in, after the 1860s, they weren't nice either. So yes, this will give us an opportunity, but we also then need to get the resources so that everybody has some level of income. Because if it's the market or it's driving everything, it will be the people who run the things who will actually make money. The rest of us will make nothing. And that's why I think we need to take very serious economic and political decisions in this area, and take them now. Because in the book, I give examples of politicians talking about it, but in actual fact, they're doing nothing. It's easy to talk about these sort of things in the future. Everyone's talking about it. A very good example is climate change. They're talking about by 2050 we'll have zero carbon emissions. But I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what we're going to do next year. Because there's no, for example, in Ireland, we're supposed to bring down our carbons, for example, by 50% in 9 years. And it's been going up directly for the last 40 years. How are we going to do it? Because I want to see action, not words. Words are very easy, and you're not held responsible because it's the next generation of politicians are now faced with the issue. But they're right. But again, we need to think about this, how to design that, as you say, to give conditions to people to work that actually are wonderful for them and for the people that they serve and for the environment themselves. But I would also say we need to still have control of these new technologies, not have those technologies control us.
Perfect. Actually, that leads me on to another question that Sister Maureen has posed. When you're saying that we should have control of technologies, has there been any reaction or warning maybe that has come from the business or political sector with regards to your most recent publication, or are they just being quiet?
They were just being quiet. I mean, the reviews are quite good, but you see, they're also aware that a lot of businesses mightn't survive, you know. But businesses that can be automated are a problem for everyone, you know. So and it's not just work with shovels that are going to be made redundant. Other types of work are going to be made redundant also, and I outline those in the book. But I mean, at the level, I think, for example, I would love to see at every county and Ireland that we're actually now beginning to discuss these issues in a concerted way, so that we will reach solutions. I want to see solutions, not just talking about them in the future. And if we don't talk about them, it will happen by force of the market.
Thanks for that, Sean. And just to add that you have started a discussion, because I can see more and more questions coming up. There's another question from Sister Eileen Clear from the leadership team in the Southwest, where she says, it's very difficult to get someone to talk to when you ring a state agency like AIR, for example, who make their money through people talking to one another. On what might be a related subject, could you comment on the ethics of medical experimentation, which involves the implantation of electrodes in the human brain or cyborgs, etc.? Or have you any comment therein?
I haven't actually thought through that the second one, but I would, again, I think any operation like that needs to be very clearly justified, you know, and we need to understand the point I made is very bad. The book, we need to understand when we're talking to humans, we're talking to people are important, and let us not foolishly mistake that these new technologies are people. They are not people. They have extraordinary abilities, way beyond my ability with mathematics at the moment. And 10 years from now, there will be multiple times more than that. But they are not people. And very often, politicians speak of them as if they were people, so they're not.
Perfect. Father Sean, thank you very much indeed. We have one or two questions about the name of the book and the reference book, but what we will do is we will make sure that everybody on the call, when they get an email afterwards showing them the recording and the presentations, we will include a link to your book so that those who said they'd love to know a little bit more can read it. So what I might do in the meantime, if you don't mind, is I'm going to call on Sister Ina Lahan, who would come in maybe just to thank Father Sean for his presentation and his preparation this morning, please. Sister Ina. Are you there, Sister Ina?
No.
Maybe she's caught out.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
That's fine. I was just going to go ahead.
Am I okay now?
That's perfect. Go ahead.
Right. I'd just like to thank Father Sean for his excellent presentation today. We're all challenged by his words. We all know about his writings on the environment, but again, this is something we need to think about now. We all appreciate the value of technology, but now we can see that it has downsides as well and negative aspects. So it was good. It is good to give us something to think about like that. So I just like to convey the gratitude of everyone to Father Sean today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sister Rena, and thank you, Father Sean, once again. We do have a few minutes, and I did promise that I would try and get back to some of the questions for the guests from the Cork Migrant Centre who presented to us before the cup of tea. So what I might actually do is, to get the ball rolling, I have one question myself, and maybe if others then are thinking of a question, they might come in. Recently, there has been the publication of the white paper on direct provision. And I'm wondering maybe if Joe or Naomi or Fionnuala might like to mention something about this, just so that we can kind of add to the huge amount that you've already brought before us this morning. Would that be okay, Joe?
Asking.
Joe, is that okay?
Sorry, Brian, could you say that again?
I can. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you had any comment on the white paper on direct provision that was published last February or March.
Well, it's like so many papers and reports and studies that are done. There's no action on it yet. I mean, the whole idea of that paper was, one of the big stumbling blocks was that it was going to be left up to local councils to provide the housing. Now, as we all know, there's a severe housing crisis, so that's never going to happen. And like the big problem with direct provision is the living in common accommodation that immediately makes people different and categorizes them. And so until something is done around housing, this government don't seem to have any energy around providing housing for anybody. I find it very difficult to see any change in that. That was the big challenge. The second one is the delay, the long delays. And again, COVID has a process come in on top, because the civil servants were brought into to deal with COVID from all of the sectors. And the whole issue of stamps and visas and all that is only opening up now. And they kept extending the permissions people had in order not to deal with it. And for passports, there's a huge waiting list for passports, something like 80,000 passports waiting to be delivered. So I can't see in the immediate future, Brian, any improvement in the whole direct provision. And certainly this government has only a short while to go until there's a different Taoiseach, and there will be different priorities. And certainly Fine Gael don't show any signs of doing anything about it. Naomi or Fionnuala, if you have anything to say.
Thank you very much.
No, I think that's it. Joe has covered it.
Naomi, if you're there, can I ask you a question? Again, John McGeady from the OLA Justice Officer asked a question just before the break, really, and he said that on your slides there were, or it was Fionnuala maybe, I think, on Fionnuala's slides there were 3 key aspects that you were working towards, to include anti-racist training, mentorship and policy. Could Fionnuala or Naomi maybe elaborate a little more on anti-racist policy advocacy efforts that the Cork Migrant Centre are working on?
So with that, we are actually working on we heard about the hate speech registration, and I think a lot to do with racism has to do with the prosecution. What we find in Ireland is that the laws are there. So we have the hate crimes and the law is there, but it's the implementation of the law that's not there. So for example, if it's even in terms of racist crimes that are reported to the Garda, we don't really have the data. We don't have very clear transparency on what happens if a hate crime has been, or racist crime has been reported to the guards, or what it's like their hands are tied, so they can't implement. So there has been a huge amount of work gone into the hate speech registration, and how that is going to be implemented on. So in terms of that, we've made submissions of what we think should happen, as everybody has been asked to do. And more so, our efforts are more so on the ground. We have an anti-racist group in Cork that has all the kind of frontline service providers, and that has the Gardaí in it. And what we are trying to do is to support them to build kind of bridges between the local Gardaí and the migrant communities. So we are kind of the bridge that are kind of trying to create that trust on the ground level. So we are working at the policy level in terms of feeding that hate speech legislation, but more so we are working on the ground with the community guards and trying to build the bridge between ourselves and the Gardaí. I don't know if Fanula wants to say something else more to that. And in terms of, yeah, okay, go on.
No, that's perfect, Naomi. Exactly what was said. And I'm also on the board of INER, the Irish Network Against Racism. And so we feed back a lot of the work and the general kind of consensus around racism in Ireland and the EU. So we have that link in as well as Naomi mentioned, working on the ground, linking in with what is already being done. We're not here to reinvent the wheel, as Naomi said, there's already structures in place. So it's just kind of getting connected to those structures and getting the feedback from the people we work with, the community we work to, their voices heard and their experiences attached to those structures.
Sometimes Fanula and Naomi do so much they forget they do so many things. I don't know how they get around to it. But Fanula, say a word about the what you're pioneering, the pack for secondary schools. And how they're trying to encourage, rather than doing something for migrants, the young people to allow the voices of young people. That's one of the emphasis in the Migrant Centre, is to allow people's own voices to be heard rather than doing something for them. So if you want to say a word about that, Fanula.
A lot of the work we do is just getting the information from the ground up into places where the information can actually go towards policy and go towards change. And that's why we have a working group, as Naomi mentioned, with CIPSI, Children and Young People Services Committee, with Gardaí. We also have in contact, we got guards from the Diversity Garda from Dublin joined the group as well because of the work we do with TUSLA. So we have these committees. And in terms of the anti-racist training that we're doing, with the artistic work that we're doing, it's data collection. We use the method that young people feel more comfortable in using. A lot of them, English is like their third language, and they find it easier to express themselves in different artistic ways. So through these methods, we collect the information that they're expressing around racism, around their identity and all that, and that gets fed back into information to kind of inform on policy. And so we hope to link in with more schools. We had a pilot a few months ago with schools on Zoom, a few representatives from 5-6 schools around Ireland. So we are trialing the anti-racist toolkit, and it's composed of stories, young people, personal stories, and that's what's being used to kind of educate teachers. But we're still in the pilot phase yet, but we'll keep you updated.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Fanula, Josephine, and Naomi for all of that. So just before I hand over to Sister Pauline, who wants to say a few words, I just want to bring you some news of the Justice Desk and I suppose what we have been doing. It's just a short snap on what's happening and how perhaps you can get in touch and stay in touch with the Justice Desk. I suppose for the last 18 months, like a lot of people, our work has been done online at home during the COVID times, which has offered some advantages and some disadvantages. And as Sister Grace mentioned at the beginning, it's a pity that we couldn't be gathered together, but perhaps this way of doing business allowed more people to attend. And it offers a different experience, even if you're not getting your dinner with a day out, which sometimes happens on these events, but that will be next time, I'm sure. We're also able to record it and offer it as a resource to people to look back on. One such COVID event was the inspiration for the development of an app called The Hidden Dimensions of Poverty, which we developed with All Together in Dignity Ireland and was launched yesterday. So that's a very positive thing, that perhaps if COVID hadn't happened, we mightn't have been able to produce the resources that were available online to do so. We've also made a submission to the Department of Environment, Climate and Communication on their second national SDG implementation plan, which is the government's plan telling us how they think they should implement the SDGs with us. But we have had an input into that, which is the first time, because the last time they wrote it themselves and they didn't let anybody have their say. We're also preparing for the October 17th, the United Nations Day for the Eradication of Extreme Poverty, along with about 7 or other NGOs as part of the 17th of October committee. And then together with Edmund Rice International, Our Lady of Apostles, and that's John McGeady who's online today. And I mentioned a couple of questions that John had made or had posed. And our own International Presentation Association, and Sister Anne-Marie Quinn is representing them today. And we made a joint submission to the Irish Universal Periodic Review, taking 3 specific topics into account: trafficking, domestic and gender-based violence, and refugees, migrants and asylum seekers. So the participation and the presentations that we had from Joe, Naomi, and from Fionnuala were particularly pertinent to what we are doing. And I suppose we're in the middle now of trying to lobby the UN missions and the embassies to try and make sure that any recommendations or concerns that we had, that they might be taken up. So that's kind of an ongoing piece of work as we head towards next steps. As part of the International Presentation Association, we're part of a particular focus group where we're looking at the rights and honouring the rights and care of the environment. And we've also begun work with the Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network. We're really on the beginning of something that looks to be quite good there. Next Saturday, the English presentation province are presenting on A Home for All, and that's the theme for this particular Season of Creation event, where they have asked me to speak on COP26 and how the ordinary person might be able to take part in what they can do, maybe by lobbying their MPs, rising to a moment, or a Catholic petition. There are lots of different ways, but we hope to get into that. And then every month, I suppose, there are 2 updates from our Justice Desk, and we try to offer them at the beginning and at the middle of every month. And the middle of every month is one really to do with IPA and kind of UN and a little bit more foreign. And we literally just send 2 emails in the month because we know how sometimes too many emails confuses and whatever. So we normally just send 2, and I know people share it around, and we just ask that if you have the gift of the internet, that you might share with others. And I know you're well able to share. There was great sharing of links going on last night and early this morning, and I knew that for a fact. So there's a lot to take in all morning, and we're almost coming to the end. But to thank everybody for the presentations, the work that they had done. But I'm going to call on Sister Pauline now, who will formally thank and close our event. Sister Pauline, thanks.
Thanks very much, Brian. I know that you'll agree with me when I say that we have benefited from a very inspiring and challenging morning. And I would like, on behalf of the Justice Commission, to thank firstly all of you who have attended here today. We were really heartened by the numbers, and it's great that the word is going out and that we're in collaboration and that we're sharing with each other. So we are really heartened by the numbers here today, and it was lovely to see you all again. And please God, the next time we'll have our Justice Commission Province Day, we hopefully will have it face to face. I'd like as well, on behalf of the Justice Province team, to express again our thanks to our wonderful speakers here today, Joe, Naomi, Fionnuala and Father Sean. And it was their wonderful presenters, and the whole material has been very stimulating and informative. I would like to thank the Justice Commission, our own Justice Commission here, for the great work and enthusiasm and the good fun that we had in planning today. I'd like to thank our moderator, Brian O'Toole. Brian, thank you so much for moderating in such an efficient and friendly manner, shall I say, friendly manner today. And also for all of the great work that you're doing on behalf of Presentation and the wider community and Presentation people for justice in our world, integrity and peace of creation. Before we close, I would like to share just a little prayer with you as we go our ways, and I suppose linking in with the ever wider we that Joe talked to us today about, and linking in again with the season of creation. And as we finish with the prayer, I wish you well and I wish you travel safely. We'll see you again, and let us all keep each other in prayer. So my prayer is, let us continue to journey with eyes open to wonder, as Moses turned aside to see the bush ablaze with eternal presence. May we turn aside to see the world charged with the grandeur and glory of indescribable mystery. Let us turn aside to the beauty of each other, the goodness of this life, and the truth of sacred wisdom that knows earth to be holy, all creatures to be kin, the universe to be one, and spirit to be a flaming presence for all who turn aside to see. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Pauline. And once again, thank you to absolutely everybody who took part, or looked in, who prepared in some way that mightn't be here, and to those who will look at this again into the future. So, and we know that some people may not have had the chance to bump into each other over the last long lockdown. So what we'll do is we'll leave the channel open for another 15 minutes if people want to have a chat amongst themselves, or if they can be heard above other people chatting. So we'll just leave it there for another few minutes, but thank you all very much indeed.